Hey everybody, it's Andrew from AeroGrow here, and today I just wanted to take a few minutes to talk about ways you can reduce your filament usage when you're printing larger parts like this. Now, with the AeroGrow system, obviously a lot of our parts are big and chunky because they have to hold, they have to hold components, and they're used for alignment, and they're used for support, and they're used in a variety of different ways. But in so doing, I'm always looking for ways of saving filament because obviously these parts use a lot of filament potentially. And aside from the obvious, reducing your infill percentage at a time and testing that, that's a really common way. I'm usually printing these parts at anywhere between 15 and 20% infill. They're very, very sturdy parts, but going beyond 20, you're just wasting filament. Another thing though, and this is really important and kind of the reason for today's video, is saving filament really starts as part of the design process. So this part here is a really good example. So all that was necessary here was to hold this component onto this pole, and fortunately in this case I have a little lip here that I was able to use to my advantage. But all it needs to do is hold it against the pole, slightly offset from it so that hoses can be connected to it. This is, by the way, this is a pH regulation device for the AeroGrow unit. But that's all I needed to do. So when I was designing this bracket here, I was thinking to myself, what's it need to do? It needs to defy gravity. So how do we do that? Well, I printed a little hole right here, a little 4mm hole, which is ultimately going to result in a 5mm wide tapped with thread, so I can just put a little thumb screw right in there, a 5mm thumb screw or quarter inch thumb screw. So that's my defy gravity technique right there, is the thumb screw, right? And then, of course, it needed to be slightly offset, so all that meant in this case was printing a different distance between the two circles here, the circle that's holding the device and the circle that's actually on the pole. This is another view of an earlier version. It's a little narrower, but this is basically how it's put together. It's an open one here, which allows you to pull this in and out quickly, and then it just sits on that ring because it's got a little lip right there. And then, of course, another thing I wanted to mention though here was that if you don't need to use extra plastic to support something or hold something, retain something, eliminate it. Just leave it off. Like in this case, I decided that 15mm was about perfect as far as the width of the strap that goes around this component and the strap that goes around this pole here. If I go any more than that, there's just really no reason to. It's overkill. And if I go under that, it starts to get a little flimsy, and it tends to feel a little bit cheap if I go smaller than that. So this worked out to be a really good combination of height and width, and it's 5mm wide, the width of these components, 5mm wide, 15mm high, 15% infill. This is in PET G. This is done at 255 degrees let's see, I think I was at about 50% speed when I printed this. So printed it fairly slow to get it nice and clean. But I eliminated all this here because I didn't need it. Eliminated this entire stretch here because I didn't need it. So all that's happening is this unit is now sitting against a wall here. When I pop this in place, it's nice and snug. It's not going anywhere. It's fully supported, and all I had to do was print the background plastic here, the backer plastic. I didn't have to go all the way around. In fact, I wouldn't have been able to. In this case, I needed to be able to remove this and put it back really easily, which meant I had to leave this open. So this was a perfect opportunity to do that. Also, worth mentioning is it's shaped the way it is. I call it the OC clamp. For obvious reasons, I call it the OC clamp, but it's because literally I had to print it like that because I couldn't have any overhangs, right? Or I was trying to avoid overhangs. I always try to avoid overhangs whenever possible. I design everything with that in mind. So it printed like this, worked its way up, no problems, no overhangs, no strangeness of any kind, super clean design. That's why it's shaped the way it is. But just a few things you can do to save on filament, both from a practical setting standpoint with your filament infill percentages, and then also just from a design perspective. And that's really the best way to do it, is to design it into your to your designs, thinking about where do you need it and where do you really not need it. Where could you maybe eliminate the plastic that you don't need. So thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you next time. Thanks.